hope that the students feel a sense of accomplishment. I hope they feel proud about what they created. I hope they feel like they, really can do anything.
I want to dance for the rest of my life because I've been doing it up until now, so I still want to do it forever.
You taught me this in Dance 1, that dance is like a universal language.
And over time, I've really realized that my role here has become not necessarily teaching them about the art form of dance, but using dance as a way to understand yourself in the world. And when you understand yourself, then you are able to do more.
So I can say personally, the connection you have with your students and that you want them to do better. You want them to push. You don't want them to fall under any category. You want them to push forward, and her sense of being a community, I'm about to cry. You can really see that. You want to be a community, and you push for that. You push for your students so they can have a community. I told you dance ensemble is family. So you push for that. You push for the family. You push for us being together, even though times may be hard, the being there, present in time and space, was really something that I appreciate.
Life is gonna go back to normal, and what you gonna do when you look back from 4 years in high school and you know you didn't still push yourself?
Enjoy the moments, enjoy what you have, be here, be grateful for what you have, because we couldn't have done this, we didn't have to do this, or we were probably wouldn't be able to do this.
COVID kind of makes you do things you don't want to do, or forces you outside of your comfort zone a little bit.
Be open, be different. It's okay to not just think everything's gonna be one way. It's okay to change.
I grow every day, so it's not like I'm just stuck in one position. I've learned a lot about myself through this whole experience.
It takes confidence to be a leader, to be able to step out in front of people and say, this is the way that this should be done. Because you have to be able to take criticism from people that doing that as well, because everyone's looking to you.
If you ask for things, if you are open and you're willing to put yourself out there just a little bit, that things will come to you.
Challenges do not change who you are. They reveal who you are. And what this has revealed is that during this time of great challenge, creativity still happens. Creativity still emerges. And that has been a very cool thing. So this challenge has not changed who we are, it's just revealed who we are.
My name is William Stinchcomb, and I've been with the Columbus City Schools for 23 years.
My name is Mr. Dorsey Birdsong. I'm a safety and security specialist.
My name is Anita Roman, and I am a Columbus City Schools bus driver.
My name is Samuel Gonzalez. I'm a food service manager currently at Briggs High School.
I know that if I'm not there every day and on time, that student may not have a ride to school. And that weighs on me heavily. And I take pride in knowing that my students can set their clock on me. I'm always, it takes a lot for me not to come to work. It's important to come to work every day, be on time, because we may be the only way that student gets to school.
Seeing the kids years later and having them come up to me and say how thankful and grateful they were and happy that, I kept them safe in the district, and, that I can't retire or leave the district until their kids graduate.
This was one of the best decisions I've made in my life. I didn't expect to live for this, but I love being part of the Columbus City School as a family. I just think because the building represents our districts, for me to see how clean the building is, I can take pride in my effort, and to put the cleaning and the organizing of the building, it just makes me feel a level of pride.
Peaceful mind can accomplish a lot of things. And when a student is hungry, their mind is oftentimes on what the next meal is going to be. In an indirect way, we affect the students in the kitchen. They can accomplish what they have to in the classroom. And for them to accomplish that, oftentimes that's going to better their situation for themselves, their family, and their community. So in a sense, helping the student in an indirect manner with the food is something that I really enjoy.
Columbus, Ohio has so much to offer our youth. The growth you can obtain from being a part of this district is huge. There is such diversity and learning experience happening throughout our K-12 buildings.
I love to see the excitement in the kids' faces when they know they can start school the very next day. So it's exciting for the families. So I think it's very impactful because it gives them that first start to, learning and growing.
I've been working with kids all my life. Coming here, meeting the students, the relationships that I've built over the years is just phenomenal. I'm seeing students, still see students to this day that thank me. Just, thanks for everything you've done. Thanks for helping provide a safe learning environment. Thank you for the talks, and they're really appreciative.
The district provides training throughout the school year and a lot of information that's constantly updated, and it's always available to us. So that's very helpful in being able to, provide the best service to, our students and parents. The diversity in Columbus and inclusion, it's unlike any other place, really. There's so many different cultures and you come in contact with just on a daily basis, with our students and parents and teachers.
I've really enjoyed the last few years working here at CCS. It's got great benefits, the people have been great, and I wouldn't change it for anything. I've had other job offers, but I've turned them down because I just really like the people and I like working here.
Run to your computer and apply online. This is one of the greatest kept secrets in the school district, really. This is a great job. Just apply online, it's easy. We have, our training is excellent, and we'll do everything we can to help you get through, and you won't regret it, I promise.
I used to get calls all the time from people asking me about the station. What kind of music do you play? And the canned format was adult album alternative. And so I asked the music director, what does that actually mean? And he said, we play the good stuff. That was the end of his explanation.
Well, AAA music is heavy on the singer-songwriters and the Americana, but we also include blues music, jazz, other styles like world music.
It's not the same songs every other hour. And in 90.5's case, it's not even the same songs each week.
WCB is pretty unique with all the variety of music that we can play and the variety of shows that we have.
We've had John Prine, Ziggy Marley, Warren Haynes from the Allman Brothers. We have had Tedeschi Trucks. The list goes on and on.
The thing that we have at WCBE is experts in music that know where the good stuff is.
Homemade, locally produced programming is what we're all about, and just sort of sitting there and grooving out in a radio station, knowing that I'm doing the same thing with thousands of listeners across the state. I really dig that. I dig that sort of concept.
We're all over the map. It's great music. People that go, oh, I listen to everything. If you listen to everything, all you need to do is listen to us.
This has been a very powerful project. And as we come to a place where the work is not done, the work is still ever present. But as it's nearing the end, I'm thinking, wow, we did something. And we didn't know if we were going to be able to do anything.
They were saying the same thing, that it was like small or something like that.
Okay, good morning, all. This meeting of the Governance Policy and Advocacy Committee for June 7th of 2023 is now called to order. Start with the roll call, please.
Chair Brown.
Here.
Vice Chair Cole.
Present.
Dr. Pierce. Joellen Klein. Francis Beasley.
Present.
Kelsey Ellingson. And Javante McDonald.
Good morning, Javante. Javante, are you able to hear us? I don't hear you.
Yes, I'm able to hear you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Great. Thanks for joining us. We do not have a quorum, so we'll proceed without that. We won't be able to take action on anything. And I wouldn't have anticipated we'd be able to take action on anything yet. Anyway, we've got a large package of policies in front of us, some that are pretty significant, and we want to be able to work through those. But let's do a couple things first. Because Javante is new to the committee, if you'd like to take a moment to introduce yourself, and then if everybody at the table could also introduce yourselves to Javante, that would be good. Javante, if you'd like to start.
Absolutely. So my name is Javante McDonald. I currently am the executive director of the Eldon and Elsie Ward YMCA here on the Near East Side. I'm very thankful that you guys appointed me for this committee, and I look forward to working with you all. So it's nice to meet everyone.
Thank you. Have any kids in our schools? Javante?
Hello? Yes, sir.
I just asked as you were going out, whether you have any kids in our schools?
So I have two children. My son is the only one that is school age, and he attends Mansion Day.
Very good. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, and if we could go around the table, just identify yourself and if you could say whether you're on the committee or not.
Crystal Jackson, Assistant Director of Safety and Security.
Francis Beasley, I'm a committee member.
Bill Hayes, not on the committee.
Michael Cole, Columbus City School Board member.
Eric Brown, School Board member and Chair of the committee.
Kyle Lathwell, Policy Analyst.
Todd Walker, not on the committee. I'm the Chief of Curriculum and Instruction.
And Russ Brown, I'm the Chief of Strategy and Performance. I'm not on the committee either.
Okay. Well, why don't we get started then with an overview of the package that Kyle, who's worked on this diligently for some time, can give us.
Okay, so the package in front of you today is more intense than normal. There's a lot more policies on here. We also included administrative guidelines for informational purposes today, which isn't the normal course of action, but it was felt that the policies would make less sense without the accompanying administrative guidelines. So those are here for informational purposes. The main group of policies that we have are out of academic services. It's what I would call the instructional resources package. We saw an opportunity to improve some of the policies that we had in place and also to fill some gaps where they needed to be filled, particularly with regard to complaints about instructional resources. We wanted something specific to that topic, so it was a very clear and concise way to handle any kind of complaint that comes in from a current student or a current parent or guardian, with the effort to put something in place that can be applied very consistently over time. Some of these policies just have, like for instance, student complaints, policy 5710, and then policy 5780, and several administrative guidelines referenced a complaint procedure that we did not have in place. So some of these changes are actually minor and really just to address reference errors within the manual. We have some other policies for consideration today as well. We have a revised policy 8400, which is our safety program policy. That is updated mostly on a technical basis based on changes that were made in law a few years back, but for the most part are becoming effective now. And so that is a complete replacement of that policy due to the amount of changes. The district continuity of operations plan rescission, proposed rescission, is because we have a duplicative second policy on that. So that is a cleanup effort. And then we have two revised policies that are identical relating to staff, and that is the drug-free workplace policy, and that is to address adding legally acquired medical marijuana, and that there is to be no use or possession of that in the workplace. So that is a short synopsis of kind of what we have in the package today. I don't know if Dr. Walker has anything to add.
Yep, just a couple of things. First of all, good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members, and guests. Speaking to both opportunities and gaps that Kyle mentioned as it relates to the policies around instructional resources, really from my lens, overseeing the work of academic services, in particular curriculum and instruction, there were three things that I think were important as we were looking at trying to make some enhancements and improvements, close some gaps. One is clarity. We wanted to make sure that everything that we have in our policies and our administrative guidelines are clear, it's easily understood, and as precise as to the point. We also wanted to ensure that we had coherence with the other body of policies that we have within our district. And so we wanted to make sure that what these policies were saying is in alignment with what the other policies that we already have in place are saying. And then lastly, consistency in two regards, really. In one regard, how internal issues are getting handled. We want to make sure that when an internal issue comes up, we have a consistent way to address that so that we're staying in alignment and in integration with our policies. And then also, we wanted to make sure that there was external consistency. So we, and this is really the we, she, more we, Kyle, did a lot of work in terms of looking at other districts that are similarly situated to us, particularly in Ohio, because Ohio law is unique in some ways as opposed to other states. We wanted to make sure that we are being consistent with how other districts are looking at these sort of issues as it relates to instructional resources.
Great, thank you. Makes sense to get into these policies for some further discussion. I know they were sent out. I don't know who's had a chance to read them. But I'm curious, Crystal, are you here especially just because of the safety policy?
Yes.
Anybody else here specifically here for? Well, why don't we take that one first so that you don't need to come back, or at least to have a better chance to avoid the need for you to come back. And it's on our agenda at 4.01. It's a revised policy 8400. Should be near the bottom of your packet.
I can kick that off. Policy 8400 is very much a technical policy that is aligned with law. It includes information about emergency management plans, what is required to be within those plans, talks about the 6 parts. It's very detailed. It is basically a Neola template that has been updated several times over the past few years. And a lot of it aligns to House Bill 123 and changes and some other changes that were made in law. So this is really, a lot of the changes were just technical in nature to bring our policy in compliance with current law. And I did, we went over these policies together with Chris Baker and Crystal and, worked on this together to address any issues that were unique to the district.
Great. Crystal, anything that you'd like to say about it?
Yeah, really didn't have much more to add. Like Kyle said, we kind of went over together, just make sure that we were in compliance with the House Bill 123, with the threat assessment teams. We just kind of, we didn't have a whole lot to change, but we wanted to stay in compliance with like she said, the new laws that's coming about, but not a whole lot else to add.
Anything noteworthy, anything to highlight as being unusual? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is any part of this policy 8400, does any of it tie to Homeland Security at all? Do we have any intersectionality with them that would otherwise need to have them be included in this policy?
It ties mostly to the Department of Public Safety in Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah, and the requirements in Ohio regarding emergency management plans, what needs to be done in that regard. So it's more geared towards Ohio.
Okay, but there's no federal aspect to this that needs to be included in this policy at all?
I wouldn't say in this policy.
Okay. If so, what policy would that be if you know that?
I do not know that off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not aware of one, but I'm not sure that we would treat Homeland Security a whole lot differently than any law enforcement agency that we have contact with or work with on occasion. Obviously, the majority of that is with Columbus specifically, or with the Franklin County Sheriff, but there's certainly other law enforcement agencies that we deal with. Anybody else have questions about this policy? Anybody online? Then let me ask, do we have a consensus about this policy, about going forward to recommend this to the school board? Everybody agreed?
Yes.
For me, I'm comfortable with it.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Thank you. At this point, why don't we go back to the beginning? And either of you, Kyle or Dr. Walker, want to proceed?
I can walk us through.
That's
the
fine.
policies. Yeah. So the first set we have, again, is the Policy 2520, which is titled Instructional Resources, and then also included was the administrative guideline for the selection of instructional resources. And you will see later that there is a textbook policy and administrative guideline that we are recommending be rescinded. The reason for that is we have put all of the categories of instructional resources in one place. And you can see at the very beginning, we separate the instructional resources into essentially three main categories, which are textbooks, instructional materials, and library materials. So this policy essentially sets forth what those different types of instructional resources are. So it's fairly technical in nature. The administrative guideline is where we go through the selection of those various instructional resources and how the selection process is different for each of those resources. And that, in part, is due to the law in this area. The selection of textbooks is much more prescribed in law than, for instance, the selection of library materials. So that's what the first two in your packet are.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Walker, anything to add here?
No, other than I think as we were having some dialogue, looking at how other districts sort of frame these issues, it seemed like it served clarity to have all of the different types of adopted resources in one place. They all get handled in slightly different ways, but having one place to look, we felt like just lent itself to sort of a clear presentation of, the things that we're putting in front of students through various avenues, whether it's through classroom instruction or things that students are exposed to in other ways via the library.
Questions? Anybody?
No, just a comment. I just appreciate a lot of the definitive language around who's responsible for what, who the accurate stakeholders are, what the process of decision-making actually is, and what the variables are associated with that. I appreciate that included language, particularly that what instructional materials actually constitute, that they don't constitute assessments or tests as well. That was good clarity for me. Thank you.
Anything more from anybody? Questions, comments? Anybody online? And I agree with the comments that Michael's just made about the policy, that it's a good one. I don't see any problems with it. I don't see anything controversial here. Do we have a consensus by the committee to move this one forward and recommend it to the board?
Absent of a vote, I am comfortable with this.
I'm comfortable with moving forward to the board with this policy, yes.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody not on board with this? Okay.
Would you like me to just keep moving? Packet? Okay.
Exactly.
So the next set is Policy 2525, which is and also the accompanying administrative guideline, which is actually just a form to facilitate the use of the policy itself. This is a new policy to us. Excuse me. Previously, you would have been referred to a policy in the 9,000s, which we will come to, 9130. There was a very small section at the end of that policy that was where folks were to go to if they had a complaint. The language wasn't complete there, so this is an effort to correct that gap and to put a complaint process in place specific to instructional resources in a location in the manual that makes sense, which would be very near the instructional resource policy. It's a short policy and intended to be more simple and easy to apply across different situations and then to apply that consistently. The form is also quite simple in that it just asks, you know, who the individual is that has the issue, what the title is, whatnot about that, and the date of that submission so that it can get that process started.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. One is on the appreciative inquiry side, I really appreciate the fact that this is foundation with the idea that challenged resources will remain in use and will not be removed until complaint process is complete unless the material is deemed obscene, sexually explicit, that difference being, you can tell me if I'm off, that difference being something that is illustrated in a academic, biological way that shows a male or female genitalia versus the actual use or action of male, female genitalia engagement. Am I making sense?
You are making sense. I would
Okay.
think that's consistent with definitions.
Okay. That otherwise would be considered as sexually explicit material, yes?
There are definitions around that that are technical, but I would say that the difference between an image that, for instance, you may see in a biology book or a health-related book is different than an image that is depicting sexual content.
Okay, thank you
or
very
act,
kindly.
a sexual act.
With regard to the instructional resources complaint form or other associated complaint forms, again, I appreciate the opportunity for folks to have this as a model, but and you and I have talked, you know, offline, but I wanted to make it more formal that we should include an administrator's signature, whoever a designee is, whether it's the principal or whoever that administrative designee is that otherwise will process this form needs to have their signature on this document as well and the date that they signed it. The rationale is that this is about receipt of this complaint. I think it's in fidelity to us wanting to remediate the situation. I think it also is something that, you know, is fair to the person that made the complaint on our part. We want to make sure that the proper person signed off on this and that proper action moving forward will be taken.
Yes, I appreciate that comment and that suggestion. It's a good one, and that change will be made.
Thank you.
I wonder if, I guess there won't be many of these. I don't anticipate that there will be many, but I was going to suggest that a timestamp from the office that it's filed with may be just as appropriate. If that's the way things operate, and I don't know, but I think that would serve the same purpose of having a certain date by, you know, that things begin to flow, the process begins. Obviously, this is a policy that has been absent. We haven't really needed much that I'm aware of. Unlike the suburbs and lots of other places in the country, we've not been deluged with complaints of this nature. And as a result, this is the time to get a policy in place in case that arises, and a procedure for handling of complaints. There are other questions about 2525 or comments.
I'm comfortable, Mr. Chair, with a consensus to move this forward with the appropriate recommendations for change.
Right. And the form is an administrative guideline, so we're not acting, well, we're not acting at all today, but we're not speaking to that in terms of recommendation. Committee all on board with moving forward, presenting this to the board with our recommendation of a consensus?
Yes, I am.
Gervonta?
Yes.
Great.
So the next policy in the packet is Policy 9130, which is a public complaints policy. It is in Neola fashion to kind of put all of these things together. So this policy is intended to address several different kinds of complaints that could come into the district. At the bottom, our existing policy at the very bottom references instructional complaints about instructional materials. As you can see from the markup, it didn't actually address complaints. It really more addressed the right for parents to inspect these materials. That right is now addressed back in 2520, that there is a right for parents to inspect. This is more suited to a complaint issue or a challenge, because that's what the whole policy is about. So what we've done is add language that directs folks, if there's an issue like this and they happen to look at 9130, it directs them back to the new complaint policy at 2525 and the accompanying form. You will also see that there is an administrative guideline that was in place, AG 9130A. And again, it was circular in nature as it related to the policy itself. It referred to forms that we don't, in fact, have, and also was about inspection versus complaints. So I think the language really didn't belong there in the first place. So this was an opportunity to just correct something that wasn't accurate, make it more logical in terms of where the complaint procedure appears in the manual. So this is both an update of the policy and then a rescission of the administrative guideline. Any questions I can answer about
Questions, comments?
Nope, only comment is, again, I'm glad about the process. I imagine it seems fairly lengthy to a person who wants something engaged, rather immediately, but I do appreciate the process, its clarity, that every stakeholder from building level up to us has the opportunity for input where, the complaintee is not satisfied. So I appreciate it.
I do want to add that if these policies had relation to a department within the district, we ran the whole policy kind of through to make sure there weren't other changes appropriate to make at this time, so we don't bring things twice. So Dr. Murphy, I see that he's on Zoom right now, and he assisted in reviewing the rest of the policy to make sure that it was in order as well.
Great, thank you. Further questions? Further comments? Anybody? All in favor of consensus to move this forward to the board?
Yes.
In favor, yes.
Monte?
Yes.
Wonderful.
All right, the next policy is alone, no more AGs. This one is our controversial issue policy, policy 2240. Controversial issues stands on its own, separate from the instructional resources policy, because it is intended to cover more situations than just something that would come up about something on paper or an instructional resource. It could go beyond that. So it is important that we have both of these policies in place, but it wasn't clear in this policy where to go if you had a complaint about an instructional resource, specifically about an instructional resource. So again, we've changed this to address kind of several different issues somebody could have around controversial issues. If it can be dealt with through the public complaints policy 9130, because it doesn't relate to an instructional resource, it directs folks there. And if it does relate to a complaint about an instructional resource, it directs people to the new policy, policy 2525. And you can see why it was important to bring this as a package, because we're making references to a policy we don't currently have. So we had to bring them all together. Any questions? Yes.
So the controversial issues policy was already in place?
Correct.
So the complaints about instructional resources is melded in within the controversial resources?
Well, the controversial resources policy now refers to the new complaint process if the complaint is about instructional resources versus maybe something a teacher says that someone takes issue with.
Okay, I see.
But this is something that honors First Amendment right and entitlement of student.
Yes, I think the policy is well written.
And instructor, which I like. The other piece is that, again, it provides very clear definition of what controversial issues constitute, and that we value in our learning spaces, mature dialogue around things where we might have an indifference. That, again, is not obscene, that is not harmful to children, that is not sexually explicit, those types of things. But we can have a conversation. We encourage that kind of academic deliberation where it's mature and appropriate. Yes?
Yes.
As a student, I took a class called Values of Life and Death, and we studied things that at the time and still today were very controversial. Dr. Kevorkian was a big part of our conversation in class around euthanasia and, that kind of thing. So I appreciate this policy that helps put classes like that with that thought process in mind to show that we care about diverse dialogue, we care about how we carry on with that diverse dialogue, and that it's something that challenges critical thought with our students while honoring our religious First Amendment rights and speech rights and all of that. So thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a well-done policy. Further comments or questions? Once again, do we have a consensus to move this forward?
I'm comfortable, Mr. Chair.
And I also am comfortable with moving it forward.
I'm also comfortable with moving that forward.
Thank you.
All right, the next policy in the packet is policy 5710. This policy is specific to student complaints. And again, this is something I kind of had to go out there and look for, but because students can have complaints, I figured there may be another reference to 9130, which was the case. In this change, we simply are adding that if a student has a complaint about an instructional resource, they look to the new policy 2525.
Mm-hmm. And you've clarified that this is for current students rather than those who formerly were students here.
Correct.
Those would be filed simply as public complaints.
Correct.
Questions, concerns? Any comments?
I'm fine.
Nothing controversial here. It's pretty basic. consensus to move this forward?
I'm comfortable.
Let's move forward, consensus.
Javante?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, the next policy is policy 5780. That is general student parent rights policy. This obviously was an existing policy. It makes similar changes to the student complaints policy in terms of actually gendered language in general, which was a suggestion that was made to me outside of this meeting. And it removes reference to, again, 9130A and the form there that the form didn't exist. And then 9130A was about inspection. And again, that's addressed elsewhere now in policy 2520. This isn't really about complaints as much as it's a general statement about rights.
Mr. Chair, I recommended some just minor revision.
Yeah.
One of them with you in mind. The first is changing the word concomitant, changing the word concomitant to associated or related, you know, just making that word a little more, less legalese, more comprehensive, simple. The other piece is I understand the legal term for age of majority being 18. If we could just put in parentheses, age 18 plus, I think that would be helpful too, just for clarity's sake. But outside of all that, I think we're good. I'm happy with it. I appreciate the use of possessive nouns like students. Makes sense, it works.
Further comments or questions? Hearing none, do we have a consensus to move this forward to the board as amended with the changes that Michael has suggested?
Consensus to move forward.
Agreed.
That would be a yes for me as well.
Wonderful. Let's keep moving.
All right, the next policy is policy 2510. That was our adoption of textbooks policy. There's also an administrative guideline associated with this that was about the adoption process with regard to textbooks. The recommendation here is that both be rescinded in that these are now covered in 2520, the policy, and the selection criteria listed in the new 2520 administrative guideline. So these are simple rescissions.
Makes sense to me. Everybody agreed?
Yes.
We'll move this one forward as well.
Yes, I agree.
All right, that would bring us in the order of things back to the safety program 8400, but we've already addressed that, I believe.
Correct?
Is there any issue with 8400.01, which is to remove this policy because it's redundant? We have a separate, more recent policy, it's 8300, that covers the same area.
Everybody agreed?
Yes.
Next.
Okay. Did we hear from Javante on that?
Javante?
Yes, I agree.
Thank you, Javante. The final two policies are identical in nature. They just come in the two separate sections of the employee area of our manual. 312201 and 412201 are our drug-free workplace policies. As I mentioned earlier, this is adding language prohibiting the use and possession of legally acquired medical marijuana in the workplace, and we go down further in the policy to define that word workplace very clearly. So these are identical, these two.
Questions, concerns?
I think my only recommendation is for us to look at the idea of including prescribed opioids into the language of this policy. I'll read something that is from the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. This was updated as of March 1st of this year. The effects of opioid use and misuse are not isolated to work or home environments, and the potential for opioid uses disorder may be preceded by injuries that happen in the workplace with the consequences affecting both an individual's working life as well as their home life. So with this kind of thought in mind, with the fact that we do have prescribed opioids and or opiates, but definitely opioids, I think that we need to consider inclusion of, that language, non-use or access to those types of drugs in the workplace. If someone is prescribed that by a physician, these are mind-altering, these are drugs that should be taken at home, utilized at home and under some sort of care, and not in the workplace. So I think we need to incorporate that, Mr. Chair, in this language.
Isn't that covered by the word controlled substance? That would be my understanding. Controlled substances include all of the scheduled medications, including opiates.
Is that the case?
I would not be able to speak definitively to the definition of controlled substance, but that is clearly in the policy. So I think we would need to take that under advisement and look further into it.
Thank you.
We can do that. Other questions, concerns? And workplace has been defined for us, and it's a pretty good definition. I'm curious, where did the definition come from?
I actually looked at OSBA's policies on this. Having worked there before, I was familiar with this policy and the definition, and I felt that it was more inclusive with what we wanted to have covered.
I think so too, and it's also the word that is used in the federal statutes that pertain to this, and I believe state law as well.
If my colleagues' comments are accurate in terms of what encapsulates a controlled substance, if we can still have something that says such as opioids, yada, 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 I think that would be helpful. I think clarity is a good thing with respect to this. It is. Assumption has a way of making farm animals out of men and women.
I have noted your comments. So that brings us to the end of what we have in this packet today.
Great. Well, with respect to the drug-free workplace policies, the two of them, we're going to hold off for now and take a look at some of those terms, and then bring these two back. If the board is willing to consider these now without waiting for a quorum and an official vote of this committee, I think it makes sense to present it to the board. The board's got the opportunity to say, no, we want it further developed at the committee level, or we want to wait for a committee vote. But any objections to doing it that way?
None. In fact, Mr. Chair, I think it would be appropriate as well to leave the door of engagement open for feedback. So if someone who was not here or someone who had an epiphany on, something moving forward and wanted to provide some additional insight, that they are able to email yourself or me or you or whoever.
Absolutely. Be welcoming of further comments. With that, does it make sense to try to present this at the next meeting of the board in June, or to wait until August?
I would, just a heads up, I will not be here for that meeting.
Which? The June
Is
meeting?
it June 20th?
I believe so.
Hopefully I will be out of the country.
So?
So, yes, I will be returning the next week. So if, as much as that matters, I just wanted to let you know that.
So your recommendation then would be?
Wait until August.
Well, I leave that up to the board, but
Well,
I would certainly be there in August, yes.
okay, so just for context for the conversation, for, the appropriate insight for you to be able to provide, we know it's our decision, but do you feel more comfortable with us having this conversation with you being available to provide some additional insight?
Yeah, I'd like to be available because
Okay.
I did a lot of the work on this, and I feel like I might be able to provide an insight for whatever question.
All right. Then see you August.
Yes, sir.
Let's see, that will be 1st of August. And it gives us a longer period of time for anybody on the committee, whether you're here or not. If you've got second thoughts, additional questions, or suggestions, to submit those. And since it would, let's see, August 1. About until, when would you need to get these ready for August 1? By the mid-August, or mid-July, rather?
I would have to check with Misty on a normal deadline for that. If there's a, these changes that we've discussed today are minor. and
Right.
Those can be made very quickly. But I presume we would want to leave a period of time open for feedback.
Yeah.
The rest of the board members were provided with access to these documents, so.
Sure. Well, why don't we get a memo out that says that it was the consensus of the committee to move forward and recommend these to the board. Invite questions, comments, suggestions, and say that those need to be submitted by the 14th of July, leaving 2 full weeks for them to be packaged and made ready for presentation.
Sounds good.
Very good. Anything else for the good of the order?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to go over this. Thank you for coordinating this and presenting it to us so very thoughtfully. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Very good. We're adjourned early.
Good.
And got
Thank you.
it all done. Well, thank you.